This is a 4x4 in a bottle. Or at least, that's what I called my video about it, which didn't stop plenty of you from pointing out that this thing is actually more of a cup. I would argue that it's still technically an impossible bottle as long as you fit an object into a glass container which couldn't possibly fit through the opening of that container. But I see your point, which is why today I want to redeem myself by fitting some Rubik's Cubes into something that's a little bit more bottle-like. Yes, I know it's technically a jar, but the cavity on the inside is much bigger than in this cup. Plus, the opening is actually a little bit smaller, which makes it enough of a bottle for me. So now that we have our bottle, let's put a Rubik's Cube inside. I think we're gonna need a bigger Rubik's Cube. In all seriousness, this is just a mini keychain cube, but I think even a normal size cube would be way too easy to fit inside of this thing. Instead, I wanna try something way bigger and way more difficult. Something fiendishly difficult to assemble, like an 8x8. But before we jump straight into the deep end with this thing, I do want to try a bit of a proof of concept to make sure that there's actually enough room inside to fit it. To do that, I'm first going to be attempting to put in a much bigger 3x3, the Qi Big Sail, which just happens to be about the same size as this 8x8. I don't have a whole ton of experience, so we're just going to be making it up as we go along. Let's get started. Obviously, the first step is to take this puzzle apart. I don't think we'll be able to fit in more than a couple of pieces at a time. Okay, now obviously the core on its own is nowhere close to being able to fit, so I'm gonna try and remove 2 or 3 of the center pieces and see if that makes things a little bit easier. That's still tight, but it does now fit in. My hope was to be able to assemble a corner section along with those first few centers, but now I'm not sure if that's gonna be possible. Let's try it though. Ooh, that is so ridiculously close, but it looks like it's not quite gonna work. So what if we remove this F2L pair and just have these 2 edges? Can we fit these ones in? It looks like just barely. So now that we've got that going, let's try and very carefully add these F2L pieces back in. So there's the corner, and now the edge will probably be a little bit trickier. We just have to be careful not to knock anything out of place. And there we go. This is already a lot harder than I was expecting, but we now have one finished corner section. Now, if there's anything I learned last time, it's that tape is very helpful. So I'm gonna try and tape together what we have now to kind of save our progress so we can't possibly knock these pieces apart. This could be a pain to remove later on, but it should save us from some pain in the meantime. So next up, we have no choice but to add on one of these center pieces, which I don't think will be too tricky. We just sort of have to position everything and get our screwdriver very carefully in there. Perfect, that was no problem. Let's get this center cap on. And now we just have to repeat what we did before by building up another corner section right there. First edge, a little bit tricky, but I think I managed it there. Corner piece, no problem. That last edge definitely gave me some trouble because I had to misalign the layer first, but it looks like we now got it in. Not to jinx it, but I think things are getting a little bit easier now that we have a solid foundation of those tape pieces to work against. But speaking of tape, I'm not taking any chances, and I'm going to tape together this corner section as well so we don't lose it. Okay, that looks pretty well secured. So now let's move on by adding in our next centerpiece. Okay, pop that center cap on, and then hopefully the rest of F2L goes nice and smoothly. Okay, here we go. I will say this is definitely a lot slower and more methodical than I was expecting, but overall I haven't come across any major challenges I haven't been able to solve. Now that I say that though, it is kind of important that we're able to rotate this cube 90 degrees to screw in that last centerpiece, but it doesn't look like that's gonna be possible. So I guess out come the F2L pairs, rotate the cube, and then put the F2L pairs back in. So with both those pairs removed, it should now be possible to rotate the cube 90 degrees, just like that. And now the tricky thing is, we have to reinsert those 2 pairs, but now at a much more awkward angle. And I think we're about to have another major problem. Because of these curves here, the cube is no longer able to sit flat on the bottom of the bottle, and even more so once we insert the last 2 F2L pairs. That's gonna make this really hard, because we're not gonna have a flat surface to push the pieces down against. So I think what we need to do is add some padding at the bottom of the bottle using maybe some paper towels. So this is where things start to get pretty involved. Hopefully we can make our way back to F2L without too many issues. Oh my gosh, that was crazy tight. By far the hardest part that I've done yet. On the bright side though, I think the last layer will be pretty simple. We basically just have to set the pieces down in there, put the centerpiece on top, and screw it in. Center cap on, and look at that beautiful, fully assembled cube. That was a million times harder than I thought it would be, but obviously we're not quite done. We still have some tape and all this paper towel on the bottom of the bottle. I'm not quite sure how to remove it. Maybe I can reach down in there with some pliers or something. Let me just mess around for a minute. There we go. Luckily it was all sort of stuck together in one big piece, so I was able to reach down there, grab it, and pull it out. As for the paper towel, I think that's a bit more of a lost cause, but I might as well give it a try. Believe it or not, I actually did it. That might have been a more impressive feat than actually putting the cube in the bottle. Admittedly, I did have some help from what is probably the perfect tool for that job. So that was by far and away the most difficult impossible bottle I've done. As you can see, it's so tight in there. That's about how far the cube can turn. So needless to say, I'm now dreading the thought of this upcoming 8x8, but we now know that the bottle is just barely big enough. If it wasn't obvious enough, I'm not going to be assembling this one piece at a time. I'm going to be taping things together and putting in as big chunks as possible. But messing with all the little tiny inner pieces, along with the logistics of tape and paper towels and all that, should make this quite the adventure. I'm also going to need a bit more dexterity than this camera angle provides, so I'm going to move things around a little bit and just do this as one big time lapse. So I'll see you on the other side, no matter if it's a quick 30 minutes, a grueling 5 hours, or just a total failure. Let's go ahead and start the time lapse. Well, that was in fact a grueling 5-hour journey. That tested all of my cube assembly skills. You could say I've been preparing most of my life for this moment. I would say that was, without a doubt, the hardest cube assembly I've ever had to endure. Harder than a 13x13 or even a section of a 21x21. The fit is incredibly tight, even more so than on the 3x3. Just look at how little it's able to turn. And that is the number one reason why this was so difficult. If I just had a few extra millimeters on either side, man, this would have been so much easier. I had to resort to assembling individual pieces, one at a time, a lot more than I expected, especially on that last quarter of the cube. And that's just because there wasn't enough room to maneuver chunks of pieces taped together into the correct place. I was surprised at just how many tools were required. A string was surprisingly useful to wrap around the core and sort of suspend the cube in midair. And of course, grabby tools are absolutely essential. But let's not forget the finishing touch, the lid of our bottle. And I guess it's time to buy a new 8x8 now, because this thing is never coming out. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching my very sped up struggles. This video was a lot more effort than I bargained for, but hey, at least it turned out well in the end. Anyway, that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys next time.